Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is up, everyone, and welcome to a Monday edition for another week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Hustler Paterson with you, Michael Remis, and vibes are high in Peg City. 2 for 2 on the weekend. The Winnipeg Jets sweep the Tampa Bay Lightning and Vancouver Canucks Friday and Sunday, and now one more win tomorrow in Detroit will get Rick Bowness, the man they call Bones, to the All-Star game representing the Central Division. We've got a great show coming up today. We'll chop it up with TSN hockey analyst and our favorite go-to guy, Dave Poulin, coming up in about 20 or so. And then Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press will jump on, discuss the Jets now hitting the road for 8 of 9, as well as tomorrow's game in Detroit, the weekend overall. And, of course, the NFL playoffs are set after a wild Week 18. We'll get to all of that as well. Not to mention Winnipeg Ice making a massive trade, and they were not the only ones yesterday in the Western Hockey League. The arms race is on in junior hockey out in the West. We'll hit that as well. And hear from the likes of Rick Bowness and Nikolai Ehlers, who made his return on Friday night, later on in the program. First up, welcome everyone. I hope you had as great a weekend as I did. Vibes, as I said, very, very high. Good things. Shout out to everyone that rode with us on the Lock Shop. All-time record weekend for myself and Dustin Nielsen. Just dropped the latest episode today talking about the college football playoff tonight, as well as some hockey. If you're watching on YouTube, go over to Lock Shop Bets, give us a sub there, and join us daily as well, usually right before Winnipeg Sports Talk gets going. Got to thank the sponsors that make the show happen before we get going. That, of course, is led by our friends at Coolbet and Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and our friends over at Knott. Michael Remis, what is up? How was your weekend?
It was a great weekend, Hustler. Got off to a great start Friday with the Jets win against Tampa Bay. What a fantastic night that was at Canada Life Center. And then again, NFL Week 18 yesterday, Jets afternoon, which the Winnipeg Jets scored more goals than the New York Jets had points. So, it was, a bit of a football score at Canada Life yesterday afternoon. So great weekend. Saturday as well. NFL Week 18, I saw your Chiefs locking down the 1 seed. So, great weekend. The weather, not too cold, Huss. You can go outside and feel like you're not going to die. So, I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, small victories.
For January, that's a win.
No, absolutely it is. And I will tell you, I was just taking a peek out the balcony. And the river trail is in full effect. I know it was out at the Forks. I just saw them doing some work down here in the Assiniboine, so they should be getting to the Hugo Dock, and we'll have the full thing extended over the next little bit. So, yeah, as long as the weather continues to cooperate, a great time to get outside, make the most of the winter while you can't get out. All that being said, Remo, it was a great time to either be at the building or on the couch watching the games on the weekend because the Winnipeg Jets welcome back 4 very important players in the lineup and came up with a big, big win against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Friday. The game yesterday, a little bit more pond hockey-ish that I know Rick Bowness would like, but another big 2 points for the Winnipeg Jets. And as I mentioned, on Wednesday, the coaches for the All-Star game will be determined by point percentage in each division. And with the Jets' wins on the weekend, they can send Bones to the All-Star game with a win tomorrow night against the Detroit Red Wings. And I cannot think of anything more appropriate for Bones than being on the bench at the All-Star game because he has been the catalyst for one of the most amazing turnarounds I can remember a long time, certainly in Winnipeg sports in such a short time. And I think you got to make an argument in the National Hockey League. Anyone that's been with us for months on this program, that was with us through the summer, all the ups and downs, Barry Trott's watch, the relative underwhelming response to the hiring of Rick Bowness since the day that he got here, man. He has done such a great job. He has become a huge fan favorite amongst Jets fans for obvious reasons. And it would just be amazing for a guy that coached his 2,600th game on the bench in the NHL Friday night, an all-time record, to get the nod as the guy who gets to sit back and watch the 3-on-3 tourney. I think it would be very appropriate. It would be great for the franchise and certainly would be deserved for Bones.
The Rick bonus career celebration to our 2,600 games, incredible. This turnaround the Winnipeg Jets have had, they were out of the playoffs. This team's, we were saying all summer, this team's a disappointment. Who are we trading? What do you mean they're not doing anything? They're hiring Rick Bowness. What? He might retire in 2 years. Now we're like, no, don't retire. Rick, what did he sign? Two-year deal? Huss is approaching 70. So, man, if the Jets were to win tomorrow and, secure him a spot behind the bench at the All-Star game, could they have three? Does he count as an all-star? So they'd have Morrissey, Bonus, and I'm assuming they're going to get Hellebuck or Connor, right? Or Dubois too. Like they should probably have three. If you ask,
hope so. Don't forget to vote, everyone. It is our civic duty to get those 10 votes in a day for the other Winnipeg Jets that are very deserving all-stars. And by the way, this is a great quote from Chris Vermette. Chris, by the way, congrats on winning the marbles last Friday. Bonus coaches the Central Division in Maurice's home building. The irony.
Oh,
I forgot that it's in Florida.
Yeah, a lot of Florida talk. Actually, someone mentioned in chat, Huss, that Florida, speaking of the Central Division, they're going through Dallas, and they lost yesterday. They did mention on the broadcast how many time zones they're going through. So Florida, it was a rough year for them, but it's been a great year here for the Winnipeg Jets, and it just continues. Has 5-game win streak, could be 6 tomorrow with the win. I mean, everything is working. They're second in the West in goal differential, although they've played one less game than Dallas. Like, the division title is within reach, and I mean, having everyone come back, it was maybe off to a rough start on Friday, but I mean, that power play on those 5-on-3s, watching them move the puck was amazing. Tampa, very undisciplined, where the Jets were 2 for 6, and killed all the penalties. That was a great game. And yesterday against Vancouver, I mean, the Jets 3-0 against Vancouver this year. It wasn't the way you draw it up, but hey, 7-4, Kyle Connor hat trick, 10 combined points from the Connor Dubois Ehlers line. Axel chipping in with a snipe and an assist. DeMello getting on the board.
I mean, it's a huge day for goal songs yesterday.
This team is rolling. Yeah, it's rolling.
And I was up. I was in a different perch yesterday. I was in the north end last night of the 300s and had a great view of sort of the rink from the end as well as the scoreboard, and made a point of snapping a few. The fact that Axel Johnson-Fjallby's goal song is entitled Mr. Cool almost sent me off the chair yesterday. We know that he looks like Mr. Cool, so maybe he's probably the one guy that can actually get away with having a song, Mr. Cool. But that got played yesterday. And how about Dylan DeMello with This Is How We Do It? Oh, man, it was a hell of a lot of fun yesterday. Oh, just quickly, Gitch in chat. Is there a lot of coaching needed in the All-Star game? Kind of just lets the players have fun, no? Exactly. Bones, I'm sure, will just sit there. He'll just have the best seat in the house for it. But it would be a nice nod for Rick, I think, to get there. But yeah, let's get back to the weekend, Reem, because the Friday game against Tampa Bay was a game where I didn't think the Jets had the best of it at 5-on-5, and I'm sure the numbers will bear that out. But when you're a good team, which the Jets are, and Tampa Bay is certainly a good team, a lot of times those games will be relative saw-offs at 5-on-5. And it comes down to special teams. And to me, that was a special teams win by the Winnipeg Jets. Not only did they make it count on their power play, but Connor Hellebuck and the PK stepping up in that final 6 minutes, killing a couple off. They really did come to play. And we heard Bones after the game give everyone that was involved in the special teams units some big props last night, because that was really the difference in a game. And, when you look at over the course of a regular season, The difference between being a first place team and in the middle of the pack, or in the middle of the pack and being on the playoff bubble, can often come down to how you handle games like that. And for the Winnipeg Jets to come through when they needed it, especially late in the game, holding on to that lead, which hadn't always been a strength of the club earlier on this season, was just a hell of a way to start off the weekend. And it was a really, really fun game, as anyone that was at Canada Life Centre in that sold-out crowd Friday night will attest to.
That was a playoff-style hockey game. You really felt the intensity between the two teams. Like, I don't know what got into Steven Stamkos. When did he turn into such a goon, Hustler? Like, cross-checking Ehlers in the back, and then...
Such a loser move. Then, like, what was he pissed off? He thought Ehlers dived on him, so he was going to give it... Like, I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, I mean, he shoved Ehlers in the back, so Ehlers fell over. You shoved him like this, like with the two hands. That is a cross-check. It may not have been the hardest one, and yeah, you hit a guy in the back, he's going to probably fall down. And then what? Then elbow dropped him right after? Like, I was really shocked to see that kind of on-ice behavior, Huss, from Steven Stamkos, who's such a great goal scorer. I was disappointed as a guy who's a big Steven Stamkos fan, Hustler. You don't see that from him, but hey, the Jets made them pay twice there on the power play.
Exactly. The Jets were more than happy to take the 2 minutes, enjoy your time in the box, and if things go well, you'll actually get out early because the Jets will score, and that's exactly what they did. The other thing that came out of the Tampa game, and we'll talk about the return of Ehlers and the rest of the guys that came back to the lineup, but Mark Scheifele dropped the gloves with Anthony Cirelli. Where the hell did that come from, Reem?
Yeah, I don't know, but Scheifele was in a good mood. Like, you saw him in the box, smiling, having a good time. And I said playoff hockey. And when you have like two solid players going after each other, I mean, as much as, you're like, fighting, get out of the game. When Scheifele drops the glove, you get fired up and, fired up the team.
I'll be honest. I was way less fired up than nervous.
Oh, well, I mean, look, this is the thing about fighting in the NHL now. Everyone wears visors. You got helmets. So, like, how big of an area do you have? And for people on the podcast, I'm, like, putting my hands over my face. And I think you're more likely to hit helmet or visor than face and, break a hand, which would suck. So that is a fair point. Hustler, but look, you got playoffs are in April. Like, if you did get injured, you'd be back in time for playoffs. It's fine. It's worth it, right?
That's not fine and not worth it. But hey, listen, every now and then that happens. You just hold your breath and hope that a star player like that doesn't get hurt on the receiving end of something, or, as you mentioned, probably more likely hurting your hand punching a guy in the helmet, which often happens as well. But listen, I thought that the energy that the Winnipeg Jets had, matching what the Tampa Bay Lightning were bringing, they were in a pissed off mood all night long. And, Ian Cole talked about it afterwards, thought that the Jets are a bit of a chippy team. I think if you watch the game, you probably would think maybe that of the visitors that night. But overall, got it done. And listen, Nikolai Ehlers back, scoring his first goal of the season yesterday was a great, great development. We saw Perfetti and Wheeler come back. Nate Schmidt had a nice contribution to the wins at all. But it was the guys that have been doing it all season long for the Jets that really stepped up on Friday night. Josh Morrissey with 3 assists, PLD with a couple, and Kyle Connor with the go-ahead goal. And KFC was just getting going as he delivered a 3-piece last night and yesterday afternoon, and sent the Hats onto the ice with a hat trick. Really has been just a great, great year. Ever since Dubois and Connor got back together, it seems both of them have trended upwards, and they've been carrying the team along with Josh Morrissey. And now with Ehlers back in the mix, we saw the potential of how dangerous that line can be yesterday in a very wide open game, we'll just say it, against the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, we talked preseason about the Ehlers, Connor, Scheifele line, but now it's Connor, Dubois, Ehlers, and I think that line could be one of the top lines in the league. Just, even you saw them all on the power play too. Just each guy, has their own unique skill set. They all can shoot, they can skate, they can all score. Choose your own adventure. If you're the defense, like, who are you gonna let beat you? And Kyle Connor got off to the slow start. I did see a tweet from Dave Manuka of Illegal Curve who said, you remember when Connor had 2 goals in the first, 14 games? something like, oh man, is he going to be able to get like even 40 goals? Because last year we were talking about 50, and I think he's on pace for well over 40.
He's got 20 now.
Yeah.
He had 3 yesterday,
and
18, 19, and 20, and we're not yet at the halfway mark of the season.
Tomorrow is the official halfway mark, so we can just double everyone's stats and say, okay, this is what you're projected for the season. But, I mean, the shot was always there. The chances weren't going in, and they're definitely going in now when you have Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, how pretty was that first one yesterday? Ehlers on the zone entry to Dubois to Ehlers. You know, just to the spot, and Connor's like right in front and just puts it in past Deal. I mean, these are all pretty nice passing plays. Connor in good shooting position, and is able to beat the goalies.
Ehlers on that goal was asked like where and when did he see him, and he goes, "Well, I didn't see him, but I just knew that he would be in and around there," and they put it out. And if after 2 games they're sort of feeling that is a really, really good sign. All the guys, I mean, Ehlers maybe especially looked like a guy that hadn't played in 2 or 3 months against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But he was far more comfortable yesterday. And I think everyone was more comfortable playing against the Vancouver Canucks and their lack of structure and just how wide open the game was. But certainly you heard from Ehlers afterwards, and maybe we should get to that right now. Let's go with 5 to 8. We'll talk Ehlers first about his return to the lineup and, playing with that group. Ehlers, let's go with 5 if you can. Ehlers talked about last game and, getting into a bit of a groove with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, who had the hat trick.
Last game was definitely a tough one. I think everyone could see that. So did everything I could to make my legs and my body feel better for this game today, and I felt pretty good.
That line, obviously, with the 3, I think you had 10 combined points today. It seems like just with what you guys all bring, that could be one of the best lines in the NHL when you're all clicking, right?
I mean, we played well tonight. I mean, there's still a lot of things that we can improve on. There's always going to be things that we can improve on. But we used our speed to find each other, to get on their Ds and get some loose pucks, and that worked out for us tonight. So that's something that we're going to continue doing.
There is Nikolai Ehlers, who I know the fans got a great welcome back to the lineup on Friday night, and had him on their feet last night with his first of the year as well. Here's a little bit more from Ehlers on the line that he's now on.
They're 2 guys that are pretty easy to play with, so I told them that I might need some help in the first couple of games, and they've been doing a pretty good job of that. So we read off each other as much as possible. I think that's what makes this line a good line. And then again, as soon as we have a chance to get the puck, defensively or offensively, we're going all out. So we try to use our speed as much as possible.
All right, there's Nikolai Ehlers on a little bit more on his line. Let's hear from Rick Bowness, the coach, on finally getting to see Nikolai Ehlers up front and center as, of course, Bones wasn't on the bench for the 2 games that Ehlers did play at the beginning of the year. But here's what he thought of Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois welcoming 27 back on that line.
But don't forget, before Cole and Wheels went down, it's unfortunate we lost both of them, but that line, the Scheifele line, was really good with Wheels and Cole. So, we got to give them a couple of games to find their game. We knew that. So it is both. But it is part of that too, is that the Scheifele line was playing really well. Before Nick came back, that was we had 1A and 1B, like they were both playing really well. So it's unfortunate that those 2 guys went down, and now we got to give them some time to find their game. And in the meantime, that Doobie's line looks, Doobie and KC have taken off, and so you leave it alone.
All right, so there's Bones talking a little bit more about bringing all those players back, having Ehlers go on to the line with Connor and Dubois. of course, earlier on in the season. Originally out of the gate, Scheifele was the guy, but Scheifele had a lot of success with Wheeler and Perfetti, who also both returned on Friday night. But Bones talked a little bit more about their play, top six, and especially KFC, Dubois, and Ehlers.
You saw two different teams out there tonight. You saw the team that we want to be in the first 11 minutes of the first period. That's how we want to play. I think they only had like a couple of shots on net. That's how we want to play. And then we stopped playing that way for 9 minutes, and all of a sudden they're back in the game, which you can't do, because one thing Vancouver can do is they can score. And they've got a lot of skill up front, and they showed that. But we let them do that. So we didn't let them do it for 11 minutes of the first, and we let them do it for the 9. They're all of a sudden they're back in the game, and then we started well again, and then they got that the goal and the third goal and the power play goal, but we made it too easy for them to play. When you get into the playoffs, you can't play like the way we did tonight or today. It's as simple as that. You can't. We got to get in the playoffs, and we've got to learn before we get there that you get a 2-0 lead. You keep playing the right way. You keep playing the same way, and we didn't. And we started making poor percentage plays. And when you do that against a highly skilled team like Vancouver, they're going to make you pay, and they're going to make you look bad, which they did at times tonight. But that, to me, that's self-inflicted, and those are things that we've shown enough signs that we've corrected them, and then all of a sudden they come right back in. Now we got to address it again and fix it for the road trip.
There was Bones on yesterday's game, and the good and the bad, and it was a strange game, Remo, in that the team gets up 2-0 early, gives up a couple. We'll talk about David Riddick in a minute. Same thing in the second period, up 2, give up the lead, get 1. But what was impressive was the way they locked it down in the third period. And David Riddick was a big, big part of that. I mean, I joked yesterday. I was surprised at how many people were all over Dave for his play. Listen, he wasn't great. He hadn't played in a couple weeks, and overall, he's been so good for the Jets since the first period against Vegas. I thought it was a big overreaction, and I did say, yeah, he may have been occasional save Dave for the first 2 periods, but he was absolutely big save Dave in the third period. And but certainly the team stepped up as well and did that. It was a strange one though, Reem. I mean, you've got a game that didn't have a lot of the intensity that some of the other Jet games recently had. It was that afternoon crowd, but the bottom line was that they regained that lead and did not look back. But I totally understood why Rick Bowness was focusing on the fact that ain't a winning formula against top teams, especially when you get down to the nitty-gritty or the postseason in the NHL.
And I see comments in chat saying it's so refreshing. Like, even in wins, they're able to critique their play, what they liked, what they didn't like it. And as you said, the shot attempts in the third period, that was their best periods. They controlled 60% compared to 50 and 51 and 46 in the first 2 periods. And look, Dave Riddick, he's your backup goalie. He's not your starter. I thought he's played pretty well aside from the first game up until now. And, what do you like? Some of the ones early on back? Although I thought those tip-in ones were pretty nifty by Vancouver. And Kevin Sawyer kept talking about on the broadcast how Vancouver's doing that so well this year. So, we're used to the elite play of Connor Hellebuyck, who's, the best or second best goalie in the league. So, you got the win. Probably could have been better in a couple areas, but I think, you win when your backup goalie's in. That's great. So, I think he'll be better. We'll probably see him Thursday or Friday, Pittsburgh and Buffalo. But you get the 2 points, analyze what you do, and move on.
Listen, Dave's played 10 games so far this season. He's 6-4, and he's got a .905 save percentage. If the Jets' backup goaltender can have a winning record and a plus 900 save percentage, this team is going to be fine. And as I said, that first period against Vegas went so poorly with 4 goals going in. I mean, again, we're talking about a relatively small sample of 10 games. If you take that out, the numbers are much, much better. So everyone, chill out. Big save Dave. He made the big saves in the third period. That's exactly what this team needs when Connor Hellebuyck's not in there, but who's going to be back in tomorrow, and that's 37, looking to get Bones to the All-Star game. We're going to talk about it coming up right away with our guy, Dave Poulin. I got to give a big thanks to our friends at Consolidated Supply. What a blast we had in December with the Marbles Tournament of Champions. We'll do that again later on this year. But right now, we're looking ahead to 2023, and Consolidated Supply is your first choice for irrigation, for engine parts, for golf carts, outdoor kitchens, hot tubs, and more. If you have not seen what they've got available, go check out their website, cte.ca. It's got a great insight to everything that Consolidated Supply has for you, your business, or your home. The other great spot to do is pop down, see Joe Spicy and the guys, great supporters of ours, regular listeners. They are open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, but definitely check them out, give them a call, or find out more online at cte.ca. Tomorrow or Wednesday, we're going to be announcing our December winner for the Unsung Hero program. We're doing Wallace and Wallace and Josh Morrissey, but entries are open for our January submissions, people. So send us an email to unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com. And again, what we're looking for is that unsung hero in the community that's doing great things, helping others, whether it be through charity work, whether it be working through schools or the minor hockey program or other sports programs, people that quietly go about taking valuable hours and time out of their lives to make lives better for others. We'll be given an autographed Josh Morrissey jersey to the unsung hero for December. We'll announce it tomorrow, as well as one for January. And even better, Wallace and Wallace is going to donate $500 to the Dream Factory in the name of our nominator for Winnipeg Sports Talk. And Josh and Margot Morrissey are going to match that with another $500, all going to the Dream Factory, a great, great charity that Josh, of course, is an ambassador for. So let us know about the unsung hero in your community, unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com. Send us an email today. And just before we bring in Pooley, I'm feeling a little better. And part of that is thanks to a trip to Vita Health Fresh Market. You already know that they've got great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products. But maybe the best local product for battling colds and sore throats is Colflex Oregano Spray. Made locally by Initech Nutrition, Colflex Oregano Spray helps relieve coughs and sore throats and helps to maintain immune function. Get yours today at any Vita Health location. And if you are celebrating a sober January or veganuary, you'll find a fantastic selection of non-alcoholic beverages and vegan and plant-based options at Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. All right, let's talk Jets and a little more NHL with Dave Poulin, who joins us now. Pooley, what's up? How are you, my friend?
I am great. It's a beautiful Monday here. It's a lot of hockey-centric stuff, and the Jets are on a roll. How could I not be happy? It's a good thing, and it's interesting. To me, I got all of both games. I was working last night, so it was a perfect 3 o'clock start for me because I didn't have to multitask and watch a game while I was watching a game or working a game. But to me, yesterday's win, the importance of it was all the different factors that were a part of it. First off is your backup goalie's in net. It doesn't start great, and then he kind of gets a mulligan on that first goal, which is terrific. But then twice, there's 2-goal leads and the other team battles back and you find a way to get it done. And, we were talking about Kyle Connor in studio and James Duthie said to me, he's got 20 goals. And I said, he had 2 in the first 14 games, James. Like he wasn't, a part of it. And then you plug in the guys that you plugged in over the weekend for every reason. That's not a game a coach loves, but it's a game a coach needs in order to win. And good teams find different ways to win games. It's not going to be perfect every night. And for all those reasons, I think it was a great win.
Dave, we spent so much time talking about Rick Bowness and the job that he's done. It was interesting, and we're hearing it already from folks in the chat right now, how refreshing it is to hear Bones speak pretty candidly and honestly, even after wins, about what he liked and what he didn't like in games. It was a very interesting. I was at both games in the building. Two very different hockey games from Friday night to Sunday. I mean, the game on Friday, you had a bunch of new players. I mean, it was a bit of a slog at times at 5-on-5, but they held their own. And I'm interested in your perspective on it. I mean, separating the really good teams often in head-to-head matchups comes down to special teams. And listen, the power play got it done early. It was the penalty kill that got it done late. And, you know, when you're going up against two very good teams, that often is the difference between winning and losing or getting a point or getting two. And the Jets seemingly are improving game after game in those categories, which has been, I would say, a huge part in putting together this 5-game heater.
Well, let's start with the power play. You're sitting at 14th right now this morning. And how much of a factor are Nikolai Ehlers, Blake Wheeler, Nate Schmidt on the second unit, if that's the way it works out, and Cole Perfetti going to be on the power play. And, I mean, they're going to have a huge impact. Maybe the most in my core little 4 stats that I do all the time, you know, goals for, goals against, power play, penalty kill. And I'm looking for, I mean, you want to be in the top 10 in each one. And the Jets are in the top 10 in 3 of the 4. And the power play, I think, has the biggest upside because of the guys we talk about that are out. 5th in penalty kill. Most impressively, though, Andrew, I think of all, 2nd in goals against. And that's a team stat. In Connor Hellebuyck, we know well that you have one of the best goaltenders in the league, but the team defense, the pride in the team defense, and I'm including the forwards in that too, is tremendous. And that's something that everybody has to be involved for the goals against to be good. Every single player. And that's not always the case in the other categories, but every player has to be involved and good. And now you're going to have some tough decisions to make in terms of who's in the lineup and how this all shakes out. But these are good decisions. And so the one category that's got to get knocked down to get in the top 10, the power play, I think has the biggest upside. Now I think you'll see that just thrive. That was a playoff game on Friday night to me. I mean, that's what it felt like. And I had the rare luxury, and we always use the expression, you know, like a mailman going for a walk on his day off, right? What do I do on my day off? I watch hockey. Of course I watch hockey. And, you know, but I sit down as a fan and I'm allowed to watch it a little bit differently. I don't watch it with pen and paper. I don't put numbers into my phone. I watch it as a fan. I'm a hockey fan. And it's always a funny discussion at home because the discussion is, you know, particularly when you're in the middle of a series and the discussion is, any games on tonight? And now, you know,
there's a game on.
I follow the league pretty closely, but, you know, particularly my 4 teams that I work on the most are Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. So, yeah, there's a pretty good chance there's a game on tonight. And she knows well. I mean, we watch our series before or after or around, but she knows well. She gets a rare night and says, nobody's playing tonight? Nobody that's going to bother you.
Well, you mentioned a playoff feel in the building, and there was so much excitement to getting all those players back. And listen, I really thought that Nikolai Ehlers, especially on Friday night, looked like a guy, frankly, that had been off for 2.5 months or 3 months. You know, and Scheifele's line, you know, with Blake Wheeler and Cole Perfetti did some good things, but certainly weren't at that level that they were. But again, they hung in there against a really tough team and, you know, took advantages of the opportunities. And then it gets back to the penalty kill. I mean, you couldn't have 2 bigger kills late in the game that they did. And, you know, that was a big part they won in the game. But you go from that game against that opponent to that game yesterday afternoon, and it was an incredibly different atmosphere. It was a little bit of a lazier crowd, lots of kids in the building, 2 p.m. start. Started, frankly, a little easy for the Jets to get those 2 early ones on Vancouver. And let's just say that was not playoff hockey. And Rick Bowness was sure to remind his players and everybody after the fact. And that was one of those things that, I mean, you almost need, you said coaches need those sorts of games to remind guys that you'd far rather remind them after a win than after losing a game when you weren't at your best and weren't playing the way that the coach wants you to for a full 60.
No question. But for every reason that you just mentioned, including the 2:00 start, which is a different game, different prep, different meal, you know, all of that. And that game, so Vancouver doesn't get that first goal and that gets called back. but then it could have been 3-0 really easily. Kyle Connor in tight just misses the hat trick, and it's actually a really good save, and just misses the hat trick, and in a way that should be maybe a more desperate Vancouver team than it is, but it's a desperate Vancouver team, and they find a way to come back a couple of times, and yet you don't let it collapse. And I think because those games are so different, then you're really thinking about not who we play, but how we play. And that's what it is, right? Going from Tampa Bay to Vancouver, those are two different teams on the schedule, East, West, all the above, two-time Stanley Cup champions, and a team that struggled this year. You have to find a way to beat both. And they both count for the same amount of points on the schedule, and you have to find a way to deal with it. You're dealt a schedule, and that's what it is coming in. And, you don't get a lot of choice in that. You make some building dates available, and you look at the schedule, and I can look at the schedule and say, okay, this game's going to be tough. You're going to say, well, why would that be tough? Well, because you're coming off the two-time Cup champion and three-time finalist team, and then you're playing on a Sunday afternoon at home against Vancouver. That's just going to be a tough game. No matter who the opponent is, that's going to be a tough game. And so I think the response is so good. Now, pretty good challenge coming up because, in looking at the schedule maker, he throws one game in the middle of the next 9. In Arizona is the only home game. Yeah. So 8 of the 9 on the road. So you're on the road for 3. You come home for the Arizona game, and you go on the road for another 5. And I've got this season, I love breaking it down into segments. And I've got this, the next piece for me is now till the All-Star game. And then you're going to get a really nice, refreshing little break there. And I love what the league has done by tacking on days on both sides, depending on which, where you are, and making it a real break. And then you're going to have another 3.5 to 4 weeks till the trade deadline. So those are the pieces that you control. There's a big road segment coming up here. You know what? It's how we play, not who we play for the Winnipeg Jets right now.
Hey, Poulin, speaking of the All-Star game, I was mentioning this. I tweeted this out on the weekend and kind of led the show off talking about a number of the stories around the Winnipeg Jets. Not only would the team be able to make it a half dozen in a row with a win tomorrow night, making it a straight 6, but a win tomorrow night for the Winnipeg Jets would send Rick Bowness to the All-Star game as the Central Division coach. You've been around Bones for a long time. You know how well he's respected. And I have a feeling that feeling is absolutely shared by every guy in that dressing room with what's happened so far. How meaningful do you think that would be for the team, the organization, and Bones? Although, let's face it, there's no coaching in the All-Star game. He'd just be getting the best seat in the house. But wouldn't that be neat if they could make that happen and get Bones? Because I'm not sure there's a guy that deserves it more than him.
Very much so. And it's not only the guys that play for him now, it's the guys that played for him in the past, because I'm one of those guys too. I had him as a head coach, and I think it'd be terrific. And, we did a little piece in the second intermission last night on the Tortorella comments about what his thoughts were about the All-Star game. Apparently not as fine as yours and mine are. And I beg to differ for every reason. And you're just talking about a veteran coach, the all-time most games behind a bench. And your perception, and it's a correct perception, I believe, Andrew, is that it would be a big deal for Rick Bowness to go to the All-Star game. Well, I can tell you, the first time I went to an All-Star game, it was a huge deal, like enormous. And, and it bothered me to hear the Philadelphia coach say, that it had no meaning. He didn't care about it. And it was like, when you go for the first time, and I was fortunate enough to go 3 times. One of them was Rendezvous, and 2 of them were traditional All-Star games. Man, I'm telling you, the boost of confidence it gave me, like those are moments when you're alone in the car and you're at a red light and you're thinking, I'm going to the All-Star game. Like, are you kidding me? I'm an undrafted free agent. I'm going to the All-Star game. And then when you walk in, and that team for me was 1986. It was in Hartford. And you see Brian Trottier and Mike Bossy. Do you go over and say hi to them? Like, do you introduce yourself? Are they going to know who you are? Like, and then there's Larry Robinson. Oh, there's Peter Stastny. Like, you think about these things, right? Like, it was so big for me and the confidence I carried back as a leader on my team for having experienced that. And, Rick is a little different in that I think just from a pure appreciation standpoint, it would be a really cool thing. I really do. So I think differently. And the All-Star game, it's for the city that hosts and the players that go, yes. And by the way, the rest of the league likes it too because they get a few days off. So if that's all that the Philadelphia coach gets out of it is a few days off, then so be it. But I think it'd be great. And the guys will know that for sure.
Well, and I mean, I could sit here talking to you or frankly anyone and make I think a pretty compelling argument that there's 4 or 5 guys in that Jet dressing room that probably deserve to be all-stars. We know that
no question.
That's not possible the way things are set up. And I mean, to be honest, the thought of Connor Hellebuck getting a nice extended rest, I think makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, although he certainly deserves to be there.
He does, but you look at it both ways, right? And would you rather have a nice rest, have another run, be a finalist for the Vezina and all of those things? And the guys that go are going to benefit. There's no question.
Well, and the Jets guy that's going, Dave, is Josh Morrissey. And I mean, he has been everything for the Winnipeg Jets this year. It was sort of funny that he didn't get on the score sheet yesterday when 7 went into the other net. But again, that was a game where some other players stepped up and got on the scoreboard. It's games like Friday night that Josh Morrissey has proven his value over and over again to the Winnipeg Jets and to Rick Bowness. And as great as we would feel if Bones gets that nod, which would be greatly deserved, I can't remember being as excited for a person getting that all-star nod as when we found out Josh did last week. And he absolutely has been full marks in his season, deserving every accolade coming his way.
No question about it. And that's an earned basis. And if you look at it, most teams you could go down and you could say any team in the top half of the NHL, there's 4 guys that can go. There just are.
Yeah.
And then you think of some of the star players on some of the teams that are out of the playoff picture right now, and they're very deserving and having tremendous years and all the above. But I think in many ways, what has happened to Winnipeg this year, if you were going to point at one thing and say, this is the Winnipeg Jets this year, it's Josh Morrissey. It is. It's buying into the new coach. It's listening to the new coach. It's being given the right messaging from the new coach in that you're a special player. We had a game plan against you when I was in your conference, and here's what we think you're capable of doing, and go do it. And he accepted the challenge and accepted the praise, if you will, but the praise also being that came as part of the challenge. You're really good. We want you to be better. And I think he's being unleashed at a perfect time in his career when he's capable both physically and mentally of handling everything that they're putting on his plate. And a nice reward, the pride he'll walk into that locker room with. And it's funny because when I was fortunate enough to go, we were really good. So I went in 86, 87, and 88. And I remember sitting beside, at Rendezvous, specifically sitting beside Dougie Wilson. And he was so down because his team was so down. Well, Josh Morrissey gets to strut into that all-star locker room. Like, he's just going to have a little saunter in that step going in there and saying, yeah, I'm the designated player for the Winnipeg Jets. And by the way, we're having a really good year.
Well, and everyone will know that, especially if Bones is the guy on the coach. Again, for folks that are wondering how that works, it's point percentage for the team. Whatever team has the best point percentage on Wednesday will get the nod. And the Jets are in that spot right now. They got to win that game tomorrow and get Bones in there. And wouldn't that be cool? Speaking of that game tomorrow, Dave, Detroit is a team out in the East. We haven't seen very much of them. I know you have a little bit. I mean, what do you make? They're just above 500 now, 16, 15, and 7. What have you seen from the Red Wings? What will be facing the Jets tomorrow? And what can you tell us about Andrew Kopp and his new home this season?
So I've had Detroit, I think, at least 4 or 5 times. I've been in Detroit a couple of times and also had them as part of the studio and part part of that as well. I think they're on a similar curve, and I think the 4 teams in the Atlantic Division that didn't finish in the playoffs last year, in Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, and Montreal, have all had some sort of acceleration this year. Montreal's clearly fell off in the last little bit. But Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit are on very similar paths, Andrew, and Detroit being ahead of both right now. I believe maybe Buffalo just passed them, but they're all right together, literally a point apart, 2 points apart. This model, when you study it, is eerily like Tampa was. The difference being for Steve Yzerman is who are his superstars up front. He inherited Steven Stamkos. He drafted Nikita Kucherov and later Braden Point, and 3 star players up front. And then he has the superstar in defense in Hedman and the better than superstar in net in Vasilevsky. And that's the model he's trying to build. So in Detroit, he's got his defenseman. He's got Moritz Seider, and I think he's got Simon Edmondson coming as well. I think defense, he's got it. He's gambling, I think, on Sebastian Cossa to be the guy that's, they're going to bring along slowly and hopefully be a top caliber goaltender, a high first-round draft pick. Up front, I'm not sure. He's got some good players, but I'm not sure he's got the superstar status of the players. And they'll have to make a decision on Dylan Larkin and see exactly where he is contractually. He's in his UFA year. Lucas Raymond's a real nice young player. They got some big kids. That Elmer Soderblom, 6'8". He's going to be a pretty good player. He's only 21 years old. But the Zadina, not sure about. Valeno, not, they haven't quite, these are all high picks that haven't quite taken the step that are necessary to do what he was able to do and build a championship team down in Tampa. But you'll see a lot of the same things. And then he propped them up this year. You mentioned Andrew Kopp, David Perron, Ben Sherratt, bringing in some guys. And if you look, he did the same thing at a similar point in Tampa to buy a little more time for his youth and to give his youth role models to follow. And I don't think, Andrew hasn't put up the numbers he put up in New York last year, which, that finish he had in New York was outstanding and more offense than really the Winnipeg Jets fans had seen over the years from Andrew, but just a really good player and a great person, obviously. But I think they're a team that's still a year or two away from competing for the playoffs and where they want to be.
Yeah, you mentioned it is fascinating comparing the Tampa model and what happened there to the way Steve Yzerman has sort of been conducting his business. And I'm with you. If people have not had a chance to see Moritz Seider,
and he's good.
He's
really good.
He is good. And what is he, 21 years old right now?
And he's got an edge too. And, he had played pro hockey over in Europe, and he actually played for the same club team in Sweden that I did, Rugla Bandy Club, BK. And he's got an edge. And he's a little bit nasty. And Edmondson, the big kid, the 6'6" defenseman they took in the first round, he was a 6th overall pick a couple of years ago. He's in Grand Rapids and percolating nicely. And I get a good feel for Grand Rapids. One of my former players, Ben Simon, is the head coach there. And the responsibility on Ben Simon is to develop players. That's what it is. And that's what their goal is. That's what it was in Syracuse. And amazingly, when Tampa built their model, they didn't own their minor league team, Andrew. In either Norfolk, when Cooper was the coach, they put the coach there, obviously, or in Syracuse. And Syracuse is one of the great dinosaur teams, if you will, a privately owned team. Howard Dolgan's the owner there and a great, minor league owner. But the relationship he has with Tampa, obviously, is so good. And they've developed in the proper manner and developed players that, have become very good NHL players. So I think he's on the same wavelength, and he does own. No, I guess he doesn't. He doesn't own Grand Rapids. They have a great affiliation, obviously, with the DeVos family.
Yeah, and of course the DeVos family. They go back to Grand Rapids back when the Moose were in the IHL at the time.
Oh yes,
been a big part of that for a long time. Hey, just before we move off, tomorrow's game, but the one guy I've got to ask you about, which I think shocked a lot of people, that he was on the waiver wire last week and then cleared, was Jacob Vrana. He's been in the NHL Player Assistance Program, but this is a guy that, has incredible talent, Dave. I mean, how did he end up on waivers and how did he clear?
Well, I think they thought he had to get back on track, and part of it was playing hockey, and they risked put him on waivers. And I'm not, I guess those questions abounded, and no one wanted to take that risk. But boy, oh boy, that's a good hockey player. That's a really, really good hockey player. And, let's hope he gets it squared away, and let's hope he does it in Detroit. That would be there. I guess they could have done the 2-week conditioning program without going on waivers. I'm not sure if that's coming out of the program, if that's one of the options you have where you can send a player down.
Well, I think they did that, and then they needed more time.
And that was why
he actually went in there. And I'm not sure whether it was a gentleman's agreement amongst GMs that, hey, listen, this guy needs this time to go there. This is in his best interest right now, and maybe team go away. But you just don't see a player of that caliber very often on the waiver wire, certainly that gets all through it. And whatever
he's
it
one
is,
of the top 5-on-5 guys in the league, Andrew.
Think about what they gave up to get him too, Dave.
Yeah. Anthony Mantha. And and so let's hope he gets it squared away. And I'm glad that if you, in fact, think it was a gentleman's agreement or the premise of that's even more impressive to me, to give a player the opportunity to come back from something like that. And let's hope he gets it back on track.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, listen, before we go, I know you were paying attention to more than just the action on the ice. NFL playoffs are set. Do you have a feeling? Do you have a lean on your AFC and NFC winners right now as we get ready for the big tournament starting with Wild Card Weekend?
Now, this whole thing is going to be strange, right? With the whole Kansas City and how that's going to play out, and But once again, I'm glad they found a solution to that, and no one's complaining about it. It just, with what
are you supposed to do?
I know, but you can still see somebody saying, the Buffalo Bills. Is this a team of destiny now? I mean, man, oh man, I had chills watching that opening kickoff yesterday.
Unbelievable.
It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I think they're going to be tough. I just do. I think they're going to be real tough. And James Duffy rather would crush me if I didn't take his 49ers coming out of the NFC. But I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with Buffalo, and they'll be at home now. So I think I'm going to stick with Buffalo and say that Josh Allen's going to get it done.
Well, I'm a big Chiefs guy, so I'm very biased in this, but I will say this, and this is the really unfortunate thing about not being able to play that game. But obviously the right decision was made. I mean, the game and the result of that one was pretty irrelevant, when what happened to DeMar Hamlin. And the best part of the weekend was that he is doing so much better. He's been communicating with teammates, with fans.
Amazing.
I mean, it's just, an amazing story. But I mean, if you ask me, there's 3 elite teams in the AFC. It's the Bills, it's the Bengals, and the Chiefs. One of those teams is going to be going to the Super Bowl. And the fact that Kansas City was fortunate enough to win and get the bye, and to at least not have to go through both of those teams,
right?
Even if they're playing the AFC Championship game on a neutral field, which I have no problem with, and I don't think anyone has. Not playing this week, and then in all likelihood being able to watch the Bills and the Bengals go at it, which is a game that fans want to see. That didn't happen. It would be great. But we'll get you back on in a couple of weeks, and we'll see what's happening as we are at the midway point. But of course, our main topic will be the Winnipeg Jets, and fingers crossed they can get that one for Bones tomorrow. We can talk about Rick Bowness at the All-Star game along with Josh Morrissey, and maybe another Jet or two, depending on what happens with the voting.
Always a pleasure, Andrew. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the hockey.
Thanks, Dave. Have a great one. There's our guy, Dave Poulin. Man, what a fun conversation that is every week. We're going to talk to the Hammer, Jeff Hamilton, coming up in just a minute. But just before we do that, I got to give a big thanks to our friends at Royal Sports for their amazing support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And it is the headquarters for sports fans in this city and province, and has been for 40 years now as a locally owned business. Saw a lot of new jerseys over the course of the last few days around the rink. And if you want to get those sweet new retro reverse jerseys, or maybe a jersey of someone that's become your favorite player, Royal is the spot to do it. You'll also check out thousands of pieces of Jets merchandise, including plenty of exclusives. But it's not just Jets gear. You've got all that great Bomber merchandise as well. Tons of NFL options for you. Major League Baseball, NBA, World Soccer. And now with the winter here, I just mentioned the skate trail is opening up. There's a lot of people that are looking for more casual skates, not necessarily needing $1,000 pair to play in the National Hockey League. Royal Sports has some really affordable options if you're wanting to make the most of the winter. Pop down and see everything they've got there, including their $1 million inventory when it comes to sticks and hockey equipment. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram, Royal Sports Pembina, for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Guys, new year, new you. If you're thinking about upgrading the wardrobe, you know where to go for that. F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown. Andrew and his great staff are ready for you to come in and get suited up. Custom suits beginning at just $400. Incredible accessories and more than just custom suits. I mean, shirts, golf pants, chinos, they've got it all. And fellas, if you're involved in a wedding party coming up this summer, make sure to talk to them about their great specials for wedding parties. Don't waste your money on renting a tux, guys. Get to F Apparel. And 2023 grads as well. Free shirt for all those young grads, as well as a great deal on it. Find out more. F Apparel, that's EPHapparel.com, online or down at 190 Smith Street. And I got to give a shout out to my friends down at Boston Pizza. Had a couple of BP visits on the weekend, checking out some of the football. And of course, after the game on Friday night, nothing better after a big win and a cold one and some delicious BP wings. You might not be heading out tonight, but I will suggest check out their game day deals, because we got a big football game tonight. TCU, Georgia for the College National Championship. Be a great spot to go watch the game, but if you are staying home, you can always order all their great bits, including the jalapeno popper dip, which is new. Get that out. BostonPizza.com for citywide delivery. All right, let's get the Hammer in here and keep this show on the going on the hopefully on the rails. Hammer, what's up? How was your weekend?
Yeah, Huss, my weekend was awesome. Much better than a week ago when I struggled through your show as I had a napkin, and producer Remo certainly earned his pay as he was cutting away from me several occasions so I could dry myself. Definitely much better. Still playing a sick game though as I enter my third week of vacation, and that is what's going to happen first. Are my ears going to pop from my December 21st flight, or is my bag going to arrive? Right now, it looked like it looked like a heavy victory, possibly for the ears popped. But I do have a tracking number on my bag now, and it's supposed to arrive tomorrow before 5 p.m. So right now, it looks like the bag's gonna win.
This was from the trip. This was from the trip out to DC, like before Christmas.
Yeah, this is from the ears were plugged, and the bag was lost on the same day, and they're both still very much a part of my life weeks later.
Well, you might be a walking embodiment of Murphy's Law right now. The Winnipeg Jets, however, are far from that. 5 in a row, and what a weekend. I mean, I know the game yesterday was not certainly a blueprint for continued success in the National Hockey League, but I can tell you, being in the building, seeing 7 goals in the other end and 11 total was made for a very fun day. But we got to start it off with Friday and that win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, a win that, I thought the Jets held their own, but certainly were probably on the short end of the 5-on-5 play, but made the most of their opportunities on the power play and came up huge on the penalty kill. And as I talked about at the beginning of the program, I mean, you will have games between good teams going head to head where often special teams is the difference. And it was the special teams that ended up getting the Winnipeg Jets a massive 2 points in a game that felt like a playoff game, as Dave Poulin just mentioned.
Man, that might be my favorite Winnipeg Jets game, I want to say almost ever. Certainly under the Rick Bowness era so far, I thought that was just a terrific game. I wasn't in the building, but it was a sold-out Canada Life Center, which we know hasn't always been the case in the last couple of years. So that's certainly nice for the crowd.
Oh, and Friday night,
team.
awesome
and Friday
crowd
night,
as well.
No less.
People were enjoying themselves, and listen, the action on the ice gave them a lot of reason to cheer. But everything around that game was great, and obviously, the vibe in the building just going into the game, getting a chance to see Nikolai Ehlers out there for the first time since the home opener, along with Wheeler, Perfetti, and Schmidt. I was really wondering how that would go with all of those guys coming back into a game against an opponent like that. And I think certainly those guys were not close to their 100% max, but man, they look good. Ehlers looked far better Sunday into Friday, but everyone had a little piece of it, but we weren't as much talking about the guys returning as the guys that have been doing so much to get them to this point, coming up big again, especially the PK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the PK has been, I don't want to say necessarily the bread and butter of this team. We all know that Connor Hellebuyck and his play between the pipes has been the bread and butter of this team, followed by a couple other things. But certainly if there's been consistency outside of the net, it's been the play of the penalty kill. I mean, they've been a top 5 unit pretty much all season long. That's a tough Tampa Bay group. And kudos to the power play, right? I mean, yeah, you're supposed to score on 5 on 3 opportunities. Well, that's not always the case. So to convert not just one, but both of those, I thought that was an impressive group. I mean, you mentioned the guys returning. I think everybody shared at least a bit of your mindset, Huss, and that there was a curiosity on how these guys, how well they would bounce back. I mean, there were some warnings from Rick Bowness about, giving them some opportunity, some time to adjust, obviously, from lengthy injuries. But I thought overall, I mean, yeah, Nikolai Ehlers looked rusty. He didn't look like he was, he definitely looked like a guy who wanted to, who missed hockey, missed the game, and maybe wanted to do a little bit too much too early. And certainly battling the rusty legs. I mean, anyone who's ever been in any injury, no matter what league you're in, there's a big difference between skating on your own and with your teammates in practice and game action. So, but yeah, certainly saw a turnaround from Nikolai Ehlers in that second game and saw flashes of him. But I think, even with I thought Schmidt was steady. Blake Wheeler coming back from the injury that he came back from, nothing short of impressive. And, I'll steal from Rennie's take on the Kenny and Rennie show post game. I thought that Wheeler didn't necessarily do anything special to stick out, but I don't think he did anything negative to stick out too, which I think is pretty much what you want out of a guy who's been missing, who's that later in his career has missed that much hockey. But I think it was just the overall spark. I think for a while there, while they were still able to churn out some of the results, I don't think it was all that easy. I mean, they were, with all due respect to guys deeper in the depth chart, they were scraping a bit of the bottom of the barrel. They were, forced to constantly shift lines, sometimes on the fly in games. There was a revolving door on that top line, and who was going to play with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor. Well, how nice does it look to have a guy like Nikolai Ehlers playing on that line? And certainly, when you look at Blake Wheeler and Cole Perfetti and Mark Scheifele, I don't think they necessarily had a terrific weekend here, but I definitely think they were playing great hockey prior to injuries to Blake Wheeler and Cole Perfetti. So I think it's just a matter of time before that line gels. But yeah, I mean, we've been talking about treading water, about surviving, these seemingly unfair level of injuries, and the Jets have done just that. And to be where they are right now, 1 point out of first place in the Central, calendar turns to 2023, guys are getting healthy. I mean, there's a lot of positives now to talk about this team as they head into a busy month here, particularly on the road.
Well, 1 point out of first by points, first place by points percentage, and that is key because on Wednesday, whatever team has the best points percentage will send their head coach to the All-Star game. And
so key.
Listen, I this is in the big picture. Does it matter much? Well, I will say this: it might be some good, proper recognition for individuals that, for instance, have Rick Bowness, Jack Adams wagers. That would be the sort of thing, because I think a lot of what's happened in Winnipeg doesn't maybe get the attention that it would if it was happening in New York or in Toronto. We all know the job that Rick Bowness has done. But just that sort of recognition, it would be a team award as well. And I think everyone would be pretty proud to have him, that happen. And I have no idea whether that is going to be, I don't think Rick's going to be saying that in the post-game comment. Hey, guys, I need this one to get to South Florida. but I wouldn't be surprised if the players behind closed doors are saying that to each other with a little bit of extra motivation to get that win and see Bones get onto the bench for the Central Division, have the best seat in the house in a coaching gig that involves pretty much zero coaching.
Like I think depends what way you want to look at it. I mean, certainly a would be a nice recognition, certainly a well-deserved recognition. Certainly a boost to anybody who threw any sugar on early bets on him to be coach of the year. That's a nice little start, I guess. But I also wonder too, Rick Bowness has been through a lot this year, right? I mean, he battled a pretty lengthy battle with COVID. He's not young. So I wonder if it wouldn't be just as nice, maybe not as much recognition from not being on the bench, but just as nice, maybe even more to get that full week off and to enjoy yourself. But I will say this, if he does make it to the NHL All-Star game, he will be by far the most popular person on the bench just for how many stops he's been at, how many teams he's coached, how many players he's influenced, how many coaches he's influenced, NHL staff he's influenced. So any weekend with Rick Bowness, any hockey weekend with Rick Bowness is a better weekend. But, you have to think at this point, whether it's getting the whole week off or getting the recognition through the week, what feels like a bit of a win-win situation, if you ask me, for Rick Bowness.
Well, for sure. And let's face it, this All-Star game is in South Florida. So, I don't think that Bones, it's not like they're going to be up late into the night game planning for the 3-on-3 tourneys. It's sort of show up and enjoy the recognition. And listen, I think this would be big for the organization too. I mean, let's face it. And, I just saw a comment in chat, I missed who it was, talking about Kevin Cheveldayoff's role in all of this. And, listen, there was a lot of doubts about where this team was, the lack of action that was certainly perceived by some, the lack of depth, which I think has been shown to be a fallacy from the players that have contributed so far, as well as some of the pickups that they've made this year, like a guy like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, who scored yesterday. But overall, I think just it would be very cool for the Jets organization, the fan base, everyone involved, and the players too, even if they're not participating, to have Bones go as kind of a sign of the fact that this first half of the season could literally not have gone much better. And not only could it not have gone much better, not a lot of people had that on their card when the puck dropped against the Rangers in game number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. He certainly is deserving of it. He's certainly deserving of the recognition. We've talked about Rick Bowness all year long. We've talked about him on what he, as a prospective coach, when he got hired, it was what was he going to be able to do? Bonus effect was thrown out very early. And I think that's the impressive part with this, and very much like a Barry Trotz, right? Similar, different coaching styles, slightly different coaching styles, but similar reputations in their ability to bring out the most in the group that they have. And I don't know if there's a better reputation for a coach than that. And so, you mentioned early on about, where Kevin Cheveldayoff's role in this is. And I certainly think you have to give him credit for standing pat, and with the guys that he had, as you mentioned off the top of the show. And, we talked about pretty much all summer long was the need for this team to do something, to make changes, that the attitudes from some of the star players on the teams wasn't going to translate into improved years, that they were almost write-offs, right? Well, I don't think that Kevin Cheveldayoff looked at this roster and was like, no, all the things that everyone else has seen, we're not seeing that. This is, whatever. But I do think it's a bit of circumstance in that you didn't want to, I don't know how much value was all high on a lot of those players after last year. And particularly their, the rumors about the locker room and relationships and all those things. So I don't know how much of it was a lack of trying. But I also think there's knowing that, okay, well, whether it was Barry Trotz or whether it was Rick Bowness after, that giving this person the opportunity to make the most out of this team, to bring the best out of this team, right? And there's nobody, even the people who felt like this team needed a shakeup, nobody denied that this team wasn't talented on paper. This team was definitely talented on paper. They had, they had star power up front. They had all the pieces, elite goaltending and Connor Hellebuck. They had a lot of the pieces that, you want for, professional, a Stanley Cup contending team to have. And so, certainly Rick Bowness coming in here, and whether it's, assembling, and let's not take away from the staff with him either, whether it's Scott Arniel, Brad Lauer, Marty Johnson, all of them bring something to the table, whether it be their hockey IQ and what, systems related or off the ice when it comes to dealing with players. All are very personable human beings, care about the individual, reflect a lot of what Rick Bowness does in his day-to-day in their work. So certainly, an honor. It would certainly be an honor for Rick Bowness. It would certainly be an honor for the players. I'm sure they view Josh Morrissey's nod as that as well, as a feeling good for him, as someone who's, a year ago, I don't know if he would have envisioned this for himself. I'm not saying Josh Morrissey didn't have confidence in himself, but he's certainly taken his game to a whole new level, and that's been part of Rick Bowness's new structure, Rick Bowness's new, bringing in a style of play that works obviously well for players like Josh Morrissey and their, his skill set on the blue line, but for everybody who's bought in and gets to see their teammates celebrated. I think that's one of the biggest things this year versus other years, is enjoying and celebrating other players, other people's success beyond your own. And certainly that would reflect in whoever gets a nod, whether it's Morrissey and more people or just Morrissey himself for this year's All-Star.
Well, and I'll say this about Chevy too, because, listen, the bonus effect started the day, well, apparently, you're talking to players, basically the day he got hired, and he started reaching out, communicating with them on what he was able to do throughout the summer. But, we all remember before training camp even started, that Friday down at the Iceplex, where he announced that Blake Wheeler was no longer going to be the captain. They were going without a captain. Blake Wheeler spoke to that day. I do not believe for a second that was Rick Bowness being lone wolf going in, hey, I've talked to some of these guys on the phone and this is what we're doing. Make no mistake about it. That was also an organizational move that was identified by people that had been here last year, including the general manager. And listen, I think that from that moment, they have been trending in the right direction as a team, as a culture, and even still with all that, it still is pretty amazing to see where they are right now. All that being said, and I guess this goes back to Chevy in some ways, because, and listen, this is part of the job, right? You take a lot of bullets when things aren't going well. You're second guessed about literally everything that you do. But I do remember plenty of conversations on how the Jets completely blown it with Andrew Kopp last year, keeping him on and then moving him at the last possible minute. I had a fun conversation on the weekend, just as we're getting into this game against Detroit, talking about Andrew Kopp and thinking about the return that Cheveldae ended up getting for him. Like, Morgan Barron is a big part of this team right now. And we had some fun being all shocked that he won the fastest skater. Well, he showed some of those wheels on Friday night, scoring that empty netter. Obviously got a tap in yesterday from Adam Lowry. And then obviously the caveat that they put in with the Rangers playoff performance, turning that second round pick into a first rounder that's now Brad Lambert, who is a top prospect for the team. We'll see what happens with that. Quietly, a lot of things have gone well. And if you go back at the moves that they've made, what they've given up, how that's worked out, that's a big part of this blueprint as well. So just interesting. But specifically about Barron, what have you seen of him? And considering, listen, Andrew Kopp, I'm not sure whether he's there yet. Kopp was a real jackknife for this team and, was able to play in a whole bunch of different areas. And I guess we've seen at times Barron had to do that along with others with all the injuries this year. But that's a deal right now, regardless of the first round pick, considering you knew Kopp was gone at the end of the season. That's worked out very well for Winnipeg.
Yeah, definitely. how can you argue with any of that? That being said, how nice would it be to have a guy like Andrew Kopp on your team right now? You know what I mean? That was, let's not forget what Andrew Kopp meant to this. Let me
ask you this. What would you rather have, Andrew Kopp at almost $6 million or Morgan Barron on an ELC?
I'd rather have Andrew Kopp probably at $6 million than
well, keep in mind, then you're clipping another four. Then you're clipping another four.
But you're asking me who I want. I didn't check with the bean counters. You asked me who I wanted.
Well, no, but every one of those questions and answers has to be kind of thought through under auspices of reality.
I wasn't even necessarily trying to counter to the point. I just don't think it should be lost in the conversation that Andrew Kopp was one of the few players on the team who played in every situation. Played power play, he played penalty kill, he played even strength. He was a big piece of the puzzle, and you'd like to think with some different asset management, you could have had a guy like Andrew Copp for a few more years. Anyways, that being said, certainly cannot look at the haul in which they've got and be disappointed with it. I mean, I think Morgan Barron has been playing very well this season. I mean, obviously dealt with some injury issues earlier on in training camp and at the start of the year. I think you don't really know, or do you know what you get in Morgan Barron, right? I think we're still trying to figure out where his offensive upside is. I think right now he certainly has a spot, a cemented spot on that third line. I think he plays hard on the puck. He plays responsible hockey. I think he's one of the guys. I think he's a guy that's easy to coach, and not just in the way he handles himself, but in the way he takes in and registers information. I think he's a quick learner. This is somebody that Rick Bowness was certainly high on early on, just had this intrigue over what Morgan Barron could be to this team early into training camp. And so when he got the injury, it kind of derailed a little bit of that momentum, but he's recaptured that and everything. And I think it's one of those things too and I wrote about this a couple months ago, is that I think the landing spot, the team, the culture, the landing spot for guys that are new to the organization or come up from the Moose and get that opportunity. I think that culture that's been one of the biggest benefits is to someone like Morgan Barron, who isn't maybe holding the stick as tightly as he would last season, right? Remember when he came in last year, it was kind of under Dave Lowry. It was, well,
it's a great point, Jeff. Can you imagine, I mean, if you had just an off the record conversation or what Morgan Barron thought of the situation that he came into last year, post-trade deadline, in the final month of that disappointing, miserable season, compared to the feeling around the team right now, he'd be one of the most interesting people to do, because his first impressions were basically playing the games where we started hearing from all these guys afterwards on their level of frustration that I've never heard before, certainly from a Jets team, and you'd rarely hear ever from the NHL, compared to the success that they're having right now. I mean, we use the term, it's a complete 180. It literally is a complete 180 from what they had last year.
Well, it's absolutely the truth. And the other thing too, I mean, if you just want to kind of get into the mental side of games, it's a pretty well-known thing that you never really want to be, you want to be claimed on waivers to a certain degree. Like if you continue to be placed on waivers and you keep on clearing, there's probably a little bit of disappointment there. But you always want to stick with the team that drafted you. That will be the team that put the most thought into you, that will give you the longest leash. And so I imagine there was a lot of feelings going through Morgan Barron's head last year when he was part of that trade. And especially going to a group that, let's face it, compared to this season and what we've seen, it is night and day. And so, I'm sure that was part of the conversations over the offseason, and just the way that Rick Bowness handles his business. I think he gives you a leash. He still holds you accountable, but he gives you a leash. He doesn't harp on mistakes unless you continue to make the same one. He lets you play a little bit freer. I don't know if that was always the case last year. It felt like, because of where the Winnipeg Jets were last season, particularly under Dave Lowry after Paul Maurice left, it was like they were playing for their playoff lives from the moment on. It was just, like every lineup decision needed to be made with such, felt like it came with such magnitude that if you didn't deliver, or if you didn't, make the most of your opportunity, then you lost it. And I think that just brings me back to where it is now. The feeling, and that's not just for Morgan Barron. That was for guys like Jansen Harkins and, Kevin Stenlin and, Mikey Asimont, and, the list goes on. Guys that we didn't think that we would be talking about, most likely, January, about their contributions to the team and for a club that was points percentage at the top of their division at this point in the year. So obviously a lot of credit goes to guys like Morgan Barron and players for taking full advantage of their opportunity, but I'll say it again. I really do think the landing spot here in Winnipeg is much different than it used to be, and it works in a way that gives you the best opportunity to take advantage of that. And that's exactly what we've seen more often than not with guys getting their opportunity in this lineup through injuries or otherwise.
And just bringing this back to Barron in that line. I mean, Joey Panks makes a great point in chat. There should be a line out the building to play with Lowry. His wings have made some big money. Adam Lowry's having quietly, I think, his best season in the National Hockey League. And, we saw him being an impact player and difference maker yesterday. And often some of the things like PK maybe don't show up as much on the score sheet or on the stats until you really dig a little bit deeper. But yesterday was a perfect example. I mean, Morgan Barron could play for another 15 years. I don't think he's getting an easier goal than he got thanks to the setup from Lowry yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Adam Lowry? I mean, just consistency in all areas and adding that punch, that scoring punch this year, obviously. A guy who's not afraid to go to the dirty areas is a massive piece of that top 5 penalty killing unit. A guy who brings it every night, a guy who knows how to be, isn't going to be relied on to score goals every game. That's not what he's paid to do. It's not, necessarily his role is leans heavily on the offensive side, but he knows how to be he knows how to bring something to every single game, whether it's that defensive prowess on the PK, whether it's being, that shutdown line against the opponent's top team, whether it's being that physical presence, right? When the game hits a lull and the bench seems a little bit quiet, he's not afraid to step up and be be that physical presence, be that fighter. So, and that's, I think that's another theme that's kind of, that's seeped into this room is that, everyone feeling a part of it, right? Everyone feeling like they're bringing value to the team's success. And I think you're getting that. And I think part of that is whether it's Adam Lowry and what, the opportunities he's received, even on, the power play in some instances, is, Rick Bowness putting players in the position to feel a part of it. I mean, I'd be curious to know what the conversations were between Rick Bowness and Adam Lowry this year, much like we've heard from other players, whether it's Josh Morrissey, whether it's Mark Scheifele, whether it's Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe a little bit more, higher end or higher profile players on the team. I'd be curious to know what Rick Bowness's conversation was with Adam Lowry over the offseason, what he viewed he could be doing better, right? I mean, Adam Lowry's been fairly consistent throughout his years here, but he's been that consistent third line, centerman, shutdown guy. Still very much that player, but he's bringing an added element, an added offense to it. And I'm wondering, what kind of effect that might have had in conversations with Rick Bowness, because, it'll be an interesting, he'll be an interesting player too here as he's also been tried out on the wing before. I mean, there is the trade deadline coming up here, and
that was a neat wrinkle
in the future.
That was a neat wrinkle.
I think that's setting something up, man. I think that might be more than just a guy. That might be just a little bit of a sneak peek, depending on what the Jets can pull off this.
And you know what? It's funny. And I know a lot of people are thinking right now, oh, Lowry going back onto that line. Okay, yeah, Scheifele, Perfetti, Lowry. Considering how the heaviness, if you will, to use a cliche hockey term of what the playoffs are, especially in this division, I wouldn't at all be surprised if it's in fact Adam Lowry, Blake Wheeler, and Mark Scheifele if they were going to go to that, and maybe Cole Perfetti finds maybe a different spot in the lineup.
Interesting.
Listen, he's most set for playing top 6 for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You think of, well, where does Cole fit in if he's not in that spot? And there's a good argument for that. But I'll tell you what, with the way Wheeler has played so far this season, and I think we'll give him a few games to hopefully get back to that level after coming back from a very painful injury, one that he came back sooner from than everyone expected. The wrinkle of what Rick Bowness did with Adam Lowry during those injuries, I think absolutely gives them an option. So let's move that back before we finish up to Cheveldayoff. I mean, he sees what Bones has been doing, certainly knows what Bones likes, what's been effective for the team, the personnel that they have. If we're now starting to look at what's on Kevin Cheveldayoff's list when they get to the trade deadline, what do you think the priority is? Best case scenario, what are the Jets adding?
I think this is like, it's a great question, and it's not saying I don't have a great answer per se, but I do think it's got to be significant. I think this has got to be notable, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets go after a guy like Jonathan Toews. Whether Jonathan Toews could play wing or center, that would free up,
Absolutely.
a guy like Adam Lowry to go up to that top line, like Blake Wheeler drop down to a third line, if you want to call it that. I mean, I think these are, you talk about a guy who, Rick Bowness, and how much he cares about face-off draws. Well, I mean, the relationship the Jets have with Chicago, I mean, I don't know. I almost think it's too obvious, to be honest with you. But there's other guys out there for sure. I mean, I thought this is an interesting one. Now, I don't know what the odds are, but what about a guy like Klingberg?
Oh, John Klingberg?
Yeah.
Listen, I think if they're going to add a big piece on the blue line, I think it's probably a guy that is. Listen, I don't think their focus is trying to boost the offensive side of their blue line. I think they've got the guys playing that way. I think they'd look for a guy that can go and eat 20, 25 minutes a night to be.
Oh, 100%. I think, if you got a guy who can eat 20 to 25 minutes, sign him up. I don't know if, there's other guys too. I mean, I don't know. I think the Bo Horvat, the whole idea of a Bo Horvat coming here, I mean, that's more than a rental, obviously. That's you'd think, or you'd think.
Well, he's a UFA. I mean, I guess you'd have to sign him. I mean,
well, yeah, I know, but I mean, obviously, I don't mean more than a rental, but you don't really want a guy like Bo Horvat, coming through, these and then leaving. You know what I mean? It's just he's going to be expensive.
The cost would be
obviously.
so high. Yeah,
the cost would be so high. It's it really is expensive. There's Barbashev is another guy whose name's been tossed out there. I just think they need to bring in. Look, they have a lot of good pieces, but I think they need to bring in some security. They need to bring in some depth, some experience, and if they can do that,
Toews ticks off every one of those. And I mean, he is a Winnipeg guy. I mean, I think, and he's also on the worst team in the league right now. I mean, I can't imagine it's very fun for Jonathan Toews right now, being a member and the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks. What would the cost be? Like I've said on record, I think Kevin Cheveldayoff should stick that first-round pick, put it in the safe, and do not touch it. Where this team is, where they're going, the contracts that'll be ending in the next couple years, the draft, the quality of the draft this year, I think it's important to maintain that, as well as those first-rounders that they've picked over the last couple seasons. But, I mean, Toews missed an entire year. He had 12 goals in 71 games last year and 37 points. And he's actually bounced back pretty well this year. He's basically half a point a game guy, 11 goals, 21 points in 38 games. There's the intangibles, the leadership, the face-offs, all of those things. And not to mention a massive salary too, which is difficult for other teams to get it. I mean, could you get Jonathan Toews for a second-round pick and maybe a prospect?
I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I mean, maybe. Like, it will be interesting too.
Well, if it was you, would you trade your first-round pick for Jonathan Toews, knowing that he's a UFA at the end of the season?
I think if you are in a position where you're leading your division, where you've shown signs that the Jets have shown all season long to be in it. This doesn't feel like a pretty good team and. Up in the standings, it looks like a good team. This looks like they could be a top 5 team in the NHL. They're currently a top 5 team in the NHL through points percentage. But I believe that they could be. I think I think holding on to first round picks. That's, and especially when you consider this team with what they, with the potential of who they could lose and the potential of what their team could look like in 2 years' time. I think you have to go all in on these next couple of years. I think these are especially this season. I mean, this is, especially if you get up to that trade deadline and the Winnipeg Jets are doing exactly what they've been doing all season long, I think it'd be a massive disappointment to have your first round pick in your back pocket after trade deadline. Knowing, understanding where this team is at and the damage it could do, and ultimately the help that it needs to put itself up there with some of the best teams in the league, like the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I mean, you'd need to. Well, listen, I guess if the team kept playing at the clip that they are right now, or in the same position as you get to the deadline, maybe I personally would be a little bit more open to that. But, when you talk about an asset like that in the organizational situation the Winnipeg Jets are in, I mean, you'd really need to be convinced that that is the guy that's going to put you over the top, because
that's the caveat here. I'm not saying you don't just get rid of your first round pick for the sake of getting rid of your first round pick.
Yeah.
That's not my point. My point is that if you have a piece that can fight for some of the big fish out there, and a first is the asking price, and it's not this astronomical asking price compared to previous years, then yeah, you definitely need to entertain.
No, it's really interesting. Hey, just quickly before we go, we got a regular season in the books. What are you thinking about the upcoming playoffs? AFC, NFC, how many teams do you think that are in it right now? I see 3 in the AFC. And to be honest, I think the Niners are the team in the I am not sold on the Philadelphia Eagles, and maybe that's foolish considering how well they played when they were healthy earlier this year, and they're going to get the extra week for Jalen Hurts to get healthy. But is there anyone out? Like, do you think the Cowboys have a shot, or are people sleeping on the Vikings? What do you think?
No, like, I'm with you. Like, I think there's 3 teams. Like, I almost feel like there's way more pretenders in this than contenders. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I obviously like the Bengals. I think they've been a surprisingly good team. I think they could make a bit of a run here.
They scare the hell out of me as a Chiefs fan. I'll tell you that.
They should. The Bills seem destined for great things this year. The Chiefs, obviously, I don't know. You look at some of these, the 49ers cannot be denied. That's a great defense, and, Mr. Irrelevance suddenly becoming Mr. Superstar. So, there's a lot of exciting teams, but I don't know. Just, you look at the way the NFL has played out this year, and I would not be surprised if there was more fireworks and more, things you're shaking your head at and can't explain in this playoff. So I'm looking forward to every second of it, to be honest with you.
Some big overs in those AFC games coming up. Hammer, great stuff as always. Hope you continue to feel better. May your ears pop, may your bags show up, and may your bets hit. We'll talk to you next week.
Perfect send off. Thanks so much for having me on, Huss. Really appreciate it. Yep, glad to be feeling better. And as always, shout out to the viewers. You guys would make this show, and we'll do it again next week.
Hey, sorry, I lied very quickly on the way out. I know it's a quiet time. You haven't been working tons. We saw Stanley Bryant last week. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, of all people, if you're hearing anything percolating with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, just what the latest is on the Bombers offseason.
Yeah, not much. I mean, Stanley Bryant, it almost felt like took too long. I thought that one was for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of who's signed and who isn't signed. I mean,
Jackson Jeffcoat's still all over the marketing materials for next year.
Yeah. I think he's, I think it's just a matter of time for him too. I think it's a matter of time for a handful of guys. If there's any, if I don't know, if you're a Bombers fan, I don't think you can be all that disappointed over the last few years with as far as retention, retaining players and whatnot. But I think there's a big feeling out there of unfinished business, obviously, after the disappointing loss to Toronto in the Grey Cup. So I think a lot of guys might be we're less inclined to maybe test the waters and finish off this, solidify this dynasty that they've been building over the last few years. There's going to be some players. I always think it's, and this is only because just the gut feeling, if anything. I'm very curious about Nick Dembski and what his future is. He's the kind of guy that certainly respects his time here, respects his teammates, loves what Winnipeg has done for his career, loves being a Winnipeg Blue Bomber, but is also comes across to me as a guy who's also smart in the business side of things, right? Knows that football isn't a forever game. And I don't want to classify him as a guy that's chasing the money, but I would classify him as a guy that would maybe seek out his options, see what opportunities are out there. But that being said, it could be this end of this weekend. He's inked to a deal, and we're talking about it on the show next week. So I definitely, I don't have anything, percolating per se on what the next move is going to be with the Bombers, but I've never had a feeling of, in the conversations I've had and continue to have, of any concern that the Bombers are going to lose any significant piece. So it feels like more of a matter of time and a matter of dollars and a matter of cents. And ultimately, I think this is, you're going to see a very good Blue Bombers team return to the field this spring.
Hammer, thanks for everything. Awesome hit as always, man. Take it easy.
Always a pleasure, my man. Take care.
Great stuff with Jeff. And by the way, geez, we're pushing 500 in the chat today right now. Folks, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. And I know the gang's getting those thumbs up. Hopefully we can get to 200 for the show as well. Be very nice. We're 8.59K subscribers. Be nice to get up to 8.6 by the end of the show. And again, New Year's resolution for everyone. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk. Grab their phone. Show them how to subscribe on YouTube. Show them how to get the podcast every day. And welcome them in. A lot of fun and good things happening right now on WST. Subscribe on YouTube today. Well, with that a little Bomber report, had to make sure we got that in because we'll be talking more Bombers and more CFL off-season as we continue to get closer to getting back to IG Field and back to the Princess Auto tailgate zone and all the great times at IG Field. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsor of our Bomber reports on Winnipeg Sports Talk and the Bombers and WST, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And speaking of Princess Auto, of course, they're proud sponsors of Team Reed Carruthers, as well as Team Jennifer Jones. And just saw Reed tweet out the new look for his team competing in the Grand Slam circuit, including Brad Jacobs, who, of course, is the replacement for Jason Gunlickson, who left the club just a few weeks ago. So we'll be all over that. We'll see if we can get Reed on over in the next week or two to find out about how things are shaping up and what he's going to do for provincials. Obviously, with Brad Jacobs not eligible as he's competing as a skip in Northern Ontario. The other New Year's resolution, folks, drink more water. That's a guaranteed W for 2023. And if you need better water and water services, we got someone for you. Our friends at Culligan Water, family owned and the experts in the business for over 65 years here in the Peg. They've got it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems and drinking water systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. 1200 Sargent Avenue is where you can find them. 694-5180 on the horn, or find out all that they can do for you, your family, or your office online at drinkculligan.com. And I do got to give a thanks to James and the gang from Canadian Club. I know Chris had a great time at the game, winning the tickets in the marble race on Friday. I know some people probably had a great time sipping a little of Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, on the weekend. Right now at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts, the Canadian Club 12-year is on a big discount, the biggest of the year. And they've also got great deals on their brand new Rightful Rye, which is available at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. Make sure to look for displays and get those great savings right now from Canadian Club at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right, let's get Remis back in here because we do have lots to get to. But Remo, great stuff with Dave, great stuff with Hammer. The chat's going off, and the why not question of the day was popped into the chat, and it was about should the Jets try to acquire Jonathan Toews at the deadline. And I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised with the results right now in the chat.
Yeah, well, I think part of the thing is the question didn't have what's the cost going to be. And so I think it was 60% of the people said no, they should not. And I think it was more so, I think everyone wants Jonathan Toews, but if it means giving up a first-round pick, people don't feel he's worth that or don't feel he's worth the salary. I saw some people saying, another guy on Chicago who does have ties to Winnipeg who's playing well is Max Domi, and we saw what he did in the playoffs last year for Carolina before parlaying that to a contract with Chicago. I assume they're going to be trading basically everyone, Chicago, as they try to get their best odds possible to get the first overall pick for Connor Bedard this offseason. So,
well, the other thing, and it's a great point that you make with Domi. They signed him and Athanasiou to 1-year deals, expiring contracts at the end of this season. And those players, for better or worse, were probably signed to be traded. I mean, the best case scenario for the Chicago Blackhawks is they continue to try to bottom out and give themselves the best chance to, get Connor Bedard, is to get great value in terms of picks and prospects for Kane and Taves. If that does happen and they're both open to moving, which I believe they are, and Athanasiou and Domi, both on those expiring contracts. And then you've got another group of players, including Tyler Johnson, Jason Dickinson, Blackwell, Lafferty, that are all UFAs after one more year. And actually, those last three guys, relatively inexpensive players as well. So I think Kyle Davidson's going to be quite busy as we get to the trade deadline. It'll be interesting to see if any of those deals happen to include the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, sorry. Dave G says, said everyone wants Taves. That's incorrect. Dave G says that's not correct. He says Taves is done. I don't know if I agree with that statement. I think with the right role, he could definitely fit in. Maybe done as, being the number one center on a Stanley Cup team.
Yeah. But I think he can help teams win hockey games, especially come playoff time. I think we'd be foolish to write him off right now. And to be honest, I think the energy of coming to an invigorated Winnipeg team, the potential of playing in the playoffs, and do it in your hometown. I mean, there's a lot of cool stories around it as well. But the bottom line is this guy's a competitor, and what's happening in Chicago is the exact opposite of what he's done for the majority of his career right now. And listen, he is a little older. I'm not suggesting, a big money extension or anything like that. But I think Jonathan Taves can help guys win hockey games. And I think Rick Bowness would look at what Jonathan Taves brings to the table and think that could be a real nice pickup for the Winnipeg Jets. But I'm with a lot of people in chat. At what cost? I do not want the Jets to trade that first round pick this year. I think that considering the changes of this club that are seemingly in the books in a year or two, potentially, means that you got to hang on to those picks. And I mean, maybe it's a prospect, maybe it's a player right now that's in the organization. Would that be able to get that job done? I'm not sure. I do think Chicago, just speaking about Taves, is going to have some limited options. There'll be very few teams will have the money, the cap space to add a player like Taves with how much he is owed. And on top of it all, he's got to be willing to go there. So all of that'll be an interesting topic going forward. And one other thing, and I know you did mention this and some people in the chat were talking about, and I haven't heard this yet, but I knew Elliot Friedman was speculating that there's been some talks about Ivan Provorov potentially coming to the Jets, and that Rick Bowness is a defenseman whisperer. He's certainly done a great job with the defensemen that are with the Winnipeg Jets this season. Provorov's interesting, Remo, and I think the Jets had a lot of interest in him earlier on. He, of course, was a star with the Brandon Wheat Kings and has some ties to the province here. And he, like so many players in the Philadelphia Flyers, have a lot of talent, but are right now mired in an absolutely miserable situation. But you do wonder what the cost would be to get Ivan Provorov. And we've talked about how packed and stacked the defense core is right now with guys like Ville Heinola and Logan Stanley when he's back, probably on the outside looking in. Are you trading a defenseman that's already on your roster for Provorov, where he fits in? And as I said, that's more of the good problems to have department, if you will, considering what the Jets have right now in the blue line. But I don't discount their interest in maybe fortifying it and maybe even adding a more established top four defender that could come in. Not sure whether that's Provorov or not, but he's a name to watch, and it's already been mentioned by one of the top insiders in the game. Yeah,
I'm trying to think if he comes in, who comes out? We mentioned Neil Pionk. Is this a salary for salary trade? Provorov making 6.75, and I'm just trying to think who would he replace, because Dylan DeMello's scoring goals. He's in a great pair with the All-Star Josh Morrissey. Brendan Dillon gives you that toughness that maybe you don't have. I'm kind of curious what the salary in, salary out in that situation works, or whose spot is he taking?
Well, and the one thing the Jets are in a great spot is the cap. Even with all the players that they've had out, they've still been accruing cap space. They've been under the cap, and that is a big advantage when it comes to adding salary at the end of the year. So anyways, these will be topics we'll look forward to continue to discuss here on the program as we, get into the second half of the season. Tomorrow, though, of course, the focus is on the Jets and the Detroit Red Wings. Win and Bones is in for the All-Star game, and I just think that would be so cool for the organization and certainly for the guy that's been the architect of this massive turnaround this season. Remo, let's quickly, I do want to talk a little NFL with you before we're done. We'll get to the Coolbet lines. But let's talk about this ice trade yesterday. And actually, there wasn't just one trade in the Western Hockey League. There was a couple of monster ones, but obviously the most important one to Winnipeg fans was the acquisition of Zach Ostapchuk, who, of course, we just saw win a gold medal with Canada at the World Juniors from the Vancouver Giants. Listen to the haul that Vancouver got back from Winnipeg. Skylar Bruce, who's been a big part of the ice success this year, Connor Dale, prospects Hudson Landmark and Owen Breeze, a first and a fifth round pick in the 2024 WHL Prospects Draft, a first round pick in the 2025 WHL Prospects Draft, and a first round pick in the 2026 WHL Prospects Draft. Matt Cockle and the gang swinging for the fences. This really does seem like this is the year for the Winnipeg Ice, and they're not worrying about the future right now when it comes to acquiring a player like Ostapchuk that can hopefully really help this team put him over the top.
Yeah, how many first-round picks is that?
There was 3 in that one.
Not 2. Yeah, that wasn't even the biggest deal of the day in the WHL. Pretty wild, teams just throwing away the future. Maybe you feel like you could, get some of that back later on. But if you have a chance to win, go for it with like your foot firmly, all the way down on the gas pedal, Hustler.
Yeah, here's this other trade that you just mentioned. The Everett Silvertips and Kamloops Blazers making a deal. Owen Zellweger, who of course is another star at the World Juniors, and Ryan Hofer going to Kamloops, going back to Everett. 4 players: Drew Englot, Caden Hamill, Ryland Pierce, Jack Baker. And listen to these picks: 4 first rounders. First round in 23, 24, 25, and 26. Along with a second rounder, a fourth rounder, a fifth rounder, a third rounder, a conditional second rounder, and another sixth rounder. I often joke that the NBA, the first round picks, have very little value anymore, the way that they were being traded. Sounds like the same thing has come to the WHL. Now, again, it is a prospects draft. These kids are getting drafted out of bantam hockey. They are very, very far from being finished products. So I understand why there's maybe, more wiggle room. But holy smokes. I mean, Kamloops and Winnipeg quite clearly have their eyes set on a WHL championship. And the future be damned, it's all about the now.
Yeah, and Kamloops, they're hosting the Memorial Cup this year. So they're going to be in no matter what. Maybe they'll get, what the strategy would be is to get eliminated in the first round and then just rest up and beat up on all those tired teams with your new trade deadline acquisition. So something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the WHL playoffs. And we'll probably be keeping an eye on the Winnipeg Ice, as it was disappointing end for them last year. But right back at it and going even harder here with the big trade yesterday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we're going to get to the Coolbet lines and talk a little NFL to finish up the program. But I do want to give some thanks to our friends over at Little Brown Jug. I'm not sure, folks, if you've tried the new Good Times Variety Pack from Little Brown Jug, but you should, because it's containing 4 awesome new beers, including a stout, rye extra special bitter, the Kolsch, which is amazing. I've tried that one, and a West Coast IPA. You can pick up the newest Good Times Variety Pack at Little Brown Jug, liquor marts, or anywhere that sells good beer. And are you participating in Dry January? Try Bright Water. I got a chance to try this on the weekend. It was awesome. Winnipeg's only local sparkling water, made with high-quality, all-natural extracts and filtered dechlorinated water. Bright Water's 0 proof, 0 sweetener, 0 calorie, so you can consume consciously. Find it more, order from littlebrownjug.ca or bright, BRITE-water.com. And as I said, I tried one of the flavors on the weekend. I'll maybe show off a couple of these cans tomorrow on the program. And hey, shout out to Nick and Nikki DQ for their great support of ours. And Of course, Nick, a big supporter of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League's newest franchise out in Niverville, just down the street from the DQ in Niverville, which of course is one of the 4 DQs for Nick and Nikki, along with 3 Winnipeg locations, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. They've got some great seasonal blizzard treats right now. The Oreo hot cocoa one, quite popular. But let's face it, it's the cakes, it's the blizzard cakes, the ice cream treats, the dilly bars, all those things that are good 12 months a year, not to mention the amazing stack burgers, fries, chicken fingers, and more at your local Nick and Nikki DQ. And if you do need a blizzard cake or an ice cream cake for an event and you want to customize, send them an Instagram message at DQ Manitoba. They'll get it set up for you for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQ locations. All right, we will get to the Coolbet lines and some NFL futures. But Remo, some congrats are in order. You won the big by the slimmest of margins, the big DFS eliminator pool with the guys on the weekend. And listen, there was some Barry Horowitzing today on the lock shop. I'm not going to lie. A major victory lap for myself and Dustin Nielsen. I think we had by far the most profitable episode in the history of the lock shop, cashing the partner parlay at plus 625. 2 more parlays we gave out at more than 5-1. And my Bears are on the clock exclusive that came through at plus 220. Shout out to Lovey Smith. Lovey's smart. He knows that he's not going to be around. He doesn't care whether they pick first or second. He wanted a win. They went for it. And that one came in, and 7-1 on the best bets yesterday. It was an absolutely incredible way to finish up the season. And now I'm ready for the playoffs, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah, I had, I won my home DraftKings season-long league where you pick a new team each week, and I did win it. I was on my way to losing, but then Aaron Rodgers threw the interception, and my opponent had Aaron Rodgers. I won by like less than 2 points. I was going pretty bonkers. I know people want to hear about other people's fantasy wins. It's a great topic. I did also take in the Winnipeg Sports Talk Weekly DraftKings League. If anyone wants to play with us throughout the playoffs, send me a message. But Russell Wilson with a big game worked out for me pretty well. I rode with Russ, although I was shocked in that game, Huss. Staley.
Okay, let's talk about this.
The
right
Chargers
now.
coach.
He is insane.
What is he doing? Leaving the stars in? Mike Williams, who battled injuries all year, carted off the field. Take the recipe from the Giants. Didn't even bother playing. They still had a competitive game. Like, what were the Chargers doing? Left the starters in for way too long. And
seriously, what the hell is he doing? This is a guy that you'll recall that rested every one of his starters for every single preseason game. Mm-hmm. Preseason.
Yes.
And yet playing a nothing game against the Broncos a week before they'll be taken to the field, knowing that they're going to Jacksonville to play the Jags, he leaves them out. Mike Williams had to get carried to the team bus after the game. Joey Bosa was limping. This team is made of... It's the most brittle team or brittle star players in the league. They never have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all the guys there for Justin Herbert. When they do, they're a very dangerous team. I cannot for the life of me wrap my head around that decision yesterday. And if Williams can't go or is limited, and God forbid Joey Bosa is on the defensive side of the ball, Kenneth Murray left the game as well. I mean, that's almost a fireable offense, even if you think the guy is really great in all the other aspects, which honestly, this season has left much to be desired.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. So, I mean, the week of games yesterday, we did have, the Vikings against the Bears, who you said got the Bears end up with that 1 seed.
That's wild too, because I mean, they're a team that I think is pretty committed to Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. I guess there's always the possibility if they wanted to trade Justin Fields, they could take their favorite quarterback at number 1 and have their new guy. But the value in the haul that they could get for the number 1 pick when there's so many teams that need quarterbacks. And this, unlike last year when Kenny Pickett went 20th overall and was the only quarterback taken in the first round, there's 3 guys that probably go in the top 5. So that was massive. And Houston will still be able to get a good guy at 2. But I do respect the Texans for balling out the way they did yesterday. So let's get to the Coolbet lines, and I guess the best thing to do, we'll get to this college football championship game in a minute, but let's look at these matchups in the early lines. We're going to start it off with Saturday afternoon, the Seahawks and 49ers. Geno Smith getting in thanks to the Detroit Lions. Niners are 10-point favorites at home against Seattle. This Chargers-Jags game, the Chargers are a very slight favorite, 1 point. They're minus 118 on the money line, and the Jags are even money, plus 100 at home to win and potentially move on, well, to Kansas City, assuming the Bills and the Bengals win. We'll get to those games in a minute. The Bills are a big favorite at 11.5 points against the Miami Dolphins. And listen, if they had Tua, we're probably talking about a very different line. That certainly tells me that Tua's done for the season. And then the Giants and Vikings. And the Vikings are 3-point favorites. I mean, basically, it's a pick 'em on a neutral field. They just played this team a couple of weeks ago with Greg Joseph with the 61-yarder in the final play of the game to win it. Line makes a lot of sense. Vikes, that's a 3:30 game next Sunday for the Vikings and Giants. The night game on Sunday, oh, this is going to be good. Ravens and Bengals. 6.5-point favorites are the Bengals, and I think that also indicates that it is unlikely we see Lamar Jackson in that game. And who knows whether we've seen the last of Lamar Jackson as a Ravens quarterback. That'll be a huge offseason topic. And then the Monday nighter, because again, this is the super wild card weekend, the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites in Tampa to take on Tom. What, any of those numbers stick out, or any matchups that you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, I think I picked. I was very high on the Chargers in the preseason. I really like Justin Herbert, and their group of receivers. We'll have to wait and see about the injuries. But the Jaguars did not look good against Tennessee. They had so many chances to take away that game, and they couldn't make any plays, and it was really gifted to them. So I do like the Chargers.
Hey, the defense is part of the game as well. That was a massive, massive play, though. Essentially, I guess it wasn't a pick six. It was a fumble that just bounced right into the guy's arms to return in.
Yes.
But you're right. They did have a lot of opportunities. That being said, I think their offense will be much, much better next week. I am not counting out the Jags at all, especially considering their opponents, the Chargers, who can be great, can also look horrible, and might not have some of their most important players anywhere close to full strength.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I like, Trevor Lawrence at times. He looked great, but in a must-win game, he just couldn't make any plays. And yeah, it was the defense who won that one. I think you got to look at the Cowboys over the Bucks. I don't know. Tom Brady has just looked pretty done this year. Yeah. I know it's on the road, and although at times Dak hasn't looked great, but I don't know if you trust the Bucks to move the ball against this Cowboys defense that's been pretty good this year.
No, I'm with you on that. So those are the opening lines. Hello. I'm sure they'll change a little bit, but if you want to jump on something right now, get on over to Coolbet. If you haven't played at Coolbet.com before, you can use the promo code WST on your first deposit, and we'll hook you up with a nice 100% bonus, so doubling your deposit up to $200 on your first time. Use the promo code WST, and if you're getting in on it tonight, you can also check out this NCAA Division I College Football Championship game. It'll be all over the TSN network tonight. The SEC studs, the Georgia Bulldogs, 13.5-point favorites against the TCU Horned Frogs, who've been the story of the season so far. Looking at the total was 63.5. It's actually got down to 62.5, which is still massive, but both of these teams can score points. And I will be riding with the underdog in this one, Remo. I'm not sure whether TCU can win. If you think that they can win outright, you're getting plus 350. But I'm definitely going to take a team that's had a season like they have with 13.5 points in the back pocket to start it off.
Yeah, even if you're not a huge college football fan, the national championship, I think, always delivers as a close game. And even that semifinal was pretty awesome. Was it last week?
Oh, yeah.
So
both of them were great. Let's not forget, TCU went in and handled the Michigan Wolverines, who had been awesome all season long. Lots of rumors that Jim Harbaugh is actually going back to the NFL. Would love to see that. I miss Harbaugh and all of his Harbaugh-isms in the bigs. But I got to tell you, this TCU team has They were ranked, I think Pat Gregoire said they were ranked 5th in the Big 12 going into this season. And I think people got off the scent a little bit when they lost the way they did to K-State in the Big 12 championship game. But they made a big statement in that game against the Michigan Wolverines, and I'm looking forward to what they got tonight.
We got some breaking Winnipeg Jets transaction news. This is something we speculated on earlier this week. The Winnipeg Jets just tweeting out, Hustler, they have assigned forwards Brad Lambert to the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL and forward Chaz Lucius to the Portland Winterhawks of the WHL. So here it is at 3 o'clock. The Winnipeg Jets getting it in just in time.
You know, can we? I'm going to tweet Winnipeg Jets PR back. Can you throw these out at 1 as opposed to 3?
Yeah.
We would have had so much. Well, not to mention that would have maybe taken away from some of the weekend. So it is interesting that we get it.
We can talk about it more tomorrow, but
we will. But there was a lot of speculation as to what would happen with both Brad Lambert and Chaz Lucius coming out of the World Junior Hockey Championships. I thought Lucius would be coming back. I had heard rumblings that maybe Lambert would be going there. Lambert's going to a team that is stacked and certainly will be a contender, along with Kamloops, who just traded 4 first-round picks and 1 million players for those guys. But he's going to get a chance to play junior hockey in the Western League, and Chaz out to the Portland Winterhawks as well. And listen, I don't think anyone should feel that this is a knock on those players or where they are. We've seen the same thing with Shane Wright. We saw the same thing with Brant Clark, who had monster tournaments for Canada. So, the opportunity to go in there, develop, hopefully dominate at times, you hope is the right path for them. But I can't say I'm shocked at that, although maybe a little more surprised with Lucius than with Brad Lambert.
yeah, and if you want to see Brad Lambert have some success, Alex Howe pointing out in chat that, I believe the Seattle Thunderbirds are in Winnipeg to take on the ice pretty soon. Wednesday, January 11, yes, at Wayne Fleming Arena, a.k.a. the Ice Cave. You can see the Seattle Thunderbirds. So Brad Lambert not having probably made, I don't know, we'll even have to go. We'll just meet up with the team here. I mean, they're in Brandon tomorrow. I guess has Brad even...
and then, sorry, what date is the game here in Winnipeg?
Wednesday, Seattle at Winnipeg.
Oh, nice. And of course, that's a night where I think the Jets are off, right? They go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday this week?
That is correct.
Well, might be a great night to go and check out the ice and Brad Lambert at the same time. We'll find out more about that. Maybe we'll get Munzie on too, or somebody from the ice to talk about the big move on the weekend and their look ahead. Try and do that in the next couple days as well. T. Konopali, shout out. I see you giving it to Kabilis and going with Ribbit. Kabilis is a big Georgia guy. Well, I'm not sure if I have the stones to go plus 350 on the win, but let's get a good, fun, close game. Let's get it over, and let's have 4 fun quarters of college football tonight. Tomorrow, Remo, we're right back at it and getting ready for the Detroit Red Wings. Andrew Kopp, maybe we'll check in with them and how his season's going. But of course, to me, this is the chance to send Bones to the All-Star game and make it 6 in a row for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, well, there's some comments in chat. Do you think the players are keeping track of Bones going to the All-Star game today? You think they know?
They probably haven't been keeping track, but I'm sure someone would let them know at this point. I mean, whether it's Scott Brown or... Listen, I'd be surprised if at this point they didn't know, but the leaders in the room, Adam Lowry, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey, those guys, I'm sure that they will be keenly aware of the opportunity for Bones. And I mean, we know the respect that he has. One of the cool moments, by the way, was when Rick got acknowledged for the 2600th game on the bench, which is an NHL record on the weekend. And, there was a nice applause from the players, great applause from the crowd. And this would be an accolade that I know won't mean a lot to most coaches. And I don't even know whether it would mean tons to Bones, but I think looking back with the job that he's done this year, he certainly deserves to be there. And let's face it, all it takes is a win, and we want the team to win anyway. So go get it done tomorrow, boys, and then Bones can get some sunscreen and get ready to go down to FLA for a few days.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want a free trip to Florida and get to the beach and also, take in some all-star hockey. So, yes, we are on the Bones to the All-Star game train. on to the voting. Go vote. I tweeted out our ballot, posted on our Instagram. Make sure you're following us there. Connor, Dubois, Hellebuck, just vote them all in. Although I did see some people in the comments, Hess, we got to get a upbringing of people trying to vote in Paul Stastny to the All-Star game. He's due. Give him some recognition. He's been in the league for a while. Put Paul Stastny in your Metro ballot. That's an interesting one.
Well, okay, I don't mind. You go for that. I mean, I'm a big Stastny fan. I think he did a lot of great things in here. But as I said, I think I would rather have deserving All-Stars go to the game and be a part of it.
Yes.
And to be honest, at this point in Paul's career, I'm sure he would far prefer the weekend off with his family away from the rink.
Yes.
But listen, as I said, it's our civic duty to vote for Hellebuck, Connor, PLD, Scheifele. Get those Jets going to the get the support, because it's more on us. We don't have the numbers that many of the other teams do. So hardcores like the folks that are here daily on Winnipeg Sports Talk need to be doing their part 10 times a day. Remis demoed it last week. Very easy to do. And maybe if you're with us right now, we'll throw the thing. Is John Scott still eligible to write in?
NHL.
I know everyone thought that was so cool. I thought that was the worst. Just for fun, being cool, voting the shittiest player in the league into the All-Star game, to me, I don't know.
I wasn't on that train. I know people say it was great. I don't know. The one thing about, I've seen this topic brought up by some of the people in hockey media, Jason Gregor and Chris Johnson. The reason why the All-Star game has kind of lost a lot of its, what you liked about it is the participation award for one player from every team. And, there's a lot of really good players, Huss, in the top 10 scoring that didn't get named to the team and have to be voted in. And kind of stupid, if you ask me.
Hey, I've got it. Okay, here's
we are with
compromise.
the All-Star
Here's my
game
idea.
tape. Yeah.
Every team gets represented by at least one player in the skills competition.
Yes.
The game itself, let's get the best players in the game. And if that means teams are sending 2 or 3 guys and a couple guys are just participating in the skills, or one guy's in the skills, no problem. And if your team sucks and no one deserves to be there, you'll at least get one guy at the skills competition. So there will be representation for everyone. But it's a freaking All-Star game, people. Let's put the All-Stars in the game as opposed to someone because you have to pick a guy.
Yeah, I think just when you see the list of guys that aren't there, it makes it hard to take seriously when you're putting in Seth Jones and no offense to Seth Jones, but whoever's on Arizona. These teams need an All-Star, and those are hating on the All-Star take. Kevin Hayes, is Kevin Hayes? He was a healthy scratch this year.
Again, Philly does not deserve to have any All-Stars this year. Although Carter Hart's actually been brilliant. I would have been able to handle him. SK, yeah, no voting for Vezina. He needs the rest, and he needs to be angry for not making the team. I'm starting here for this narrative. I will not lie. And then Stonewall Dave, but picking one absolute plug to vote in. Cherry was right about that. He's not right about much, but it was laughing at the players. I kind of felt that way too. I know there's a lot of people that are, trying to be really cool online and say, oh, it was the best part of everything. I mean, it ended up not being too bad, but I thought it was an absolute joke. And again, we're sitting here complaining that there's not enough room for all these real deserving All-Stars. I mean, I think, use your vote for guys that actually should legitimately be there. And there's plenty of them, and not the John Scotts of the National Hockey League. It's going to be good, Remo. I'm really fired up for tomorrow in this hockey game. But we got a good one tonight. Couple games in the league. I think there's 4 in the NHL tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I like Buffalo, big over Philly. And this Edmonton-LA is going to be interesting. I know you're a big West Coast game guy.
I am.
9:30 tonight. Oilers coming off another blown lead, up 2-0 going into the third against the Avs. They lost an OT. Beautiful winner by Cale Makar. And the Kings back at home after thumping the Golden Knights 5-1 in Vegas on the weekend. So I think Edmonton might get back in the win column. That might be good for them to get away from home ice for a bit.
Yeah, Phoenix Copley's been on a heater with the LA Kings. And I'll say this about the Kings and the Oilers. We remember their playoff series last year. The Kings know how to play the Oilers tight. They play them tough. I think there was a game earlier that they played earlier this year. I know I was expecting like a ton of goals. It was really low scoring, so I'm actually not expecting a lot of goals. The Kings know how to get under McDavid's skin. And where are the Oilers in the standings? They're like out of a playoff spot, aren't they? They're like right on the cusp here.
They got to get some wins right now. Expanded the wild card right now.
They're the
in
wild
the
card?
West. Dallas, Winnipeg, and Minnesota are the top 3 in the Central. Vegas, Kings, Kraken, the top 3 in the Pacific. The one thing with the Kings is they played 43 games. Hell, Seattle's in a spot and they've only played 38. Like they've got 3 games in hand and are 2 or 3 points clear of Calgary and Edmonton. So Calgary and Edmonton are in those spots, and that's a costly loss for Edmonton because guess who's right behind them? We have not mentioned the Colorado Avalanche, guys. The defending Stanley Cup champs are out of the playoffs right now. You know they're going to be in there at some point. And they've got 3 games in hand on the Edmonton Oilers right now. St. Louis is 2 games above 500 right now. They're at 43 points. The Nashville Predators actually have a better winning percentage. They're just 1 point back of St. Louis, but do have the 3 games in hand. Then you've got Vancouver and below, San Jose, Arizona, Anaheim, Chicago, all basically done under 500 right now. And man, it is wild to say this, but the Florida Panthers have played half the season, 41 games in the books, and they are under NHL 500, 18, 19, and 4 for 40 points, only 18 wins in the first half of the season for Paul Maurice's crew.
Yeah, 488 win percentage. That's not going to get it done. There were high expectations for this team. They just lost yesterday to Dallas, and they can't get any wins.
They'll probably get you a top 10 pick, to be honest. Although they don't have it.
They don't have it. They can't go on any win streaks. Like their special team's not good. They're not getting goaltending. They mixed up the lines today. I see every day, a lot of people have an eye on the Florida Panthers, and they got this real tough schedule here out west. Look how many time zones. You got Central Time yesterday in Dallas, tomorrow Mountain Time in Colorado, and then you're going to Vegas. This is a real grinder.
Pacific Time.
It's a grinder, Pacific Time, and then you're home. So home to Vancouver. So you got what? Yeah, sorry, you started in Eastern Time. So this is like a 4-game road trip, and each
4
game
games,
in a different
time zones. I mean,
scheduled loss. Each
how
one
could
of
any
them.
team? How could any team win one of those games?
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know how. There's just way too much adversity with having to go on that kind of road trip. So they're playing in Colorado tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on that one too.
It is going to be fascinating. And then what they got, Buffalo, Toronto. You got a lighter schedule coming up next week once they get through.
No, that's
2 of the top Western Division teams.
4 games in 7
and
nights.
Vegas.
Hustler. That's like or 5 and 8 even. That's not even humanly possible for the Florida Panthers.
Well, maybe not for them. It was humanly possible for the Winnipeg Jets, who thrived with that same schedule in December without half their bloody lineup. And they're 1 win away from sending Bones to the All-Star game. We'll talk about it tomorrow on the show. Just a quick NFL note on the way out. Cliff Kingsbury, you're out. Fired in Arizona. I know Cabillas will be happy in the chat about that, although they did extend him at the beginning of the year through 2027, so I'm sure that will be an expensive pink slip. And Lovie Smith fired in Houston. I imagine that is direct retribution for costing the Texans the #1 pick by scoring that late touchdown and going for 2 yesterday. Bill Belichick will return, though, for his 24th season with the New England Patriots, and Aaron Rodgers coy about his future after the game last night. He'll play somewhere next year, I'm sure. Will it be with Green Bay? That'll be a big offseason topic. Folks, enjoy the games tonight. And of course, shout out to everyone that won the tickets or it's going to the Ukraine Bison game. Looks like you're going to have a great crowd, just about a full lower bowl. Should be a great, great event. We might see you there. But otherwise, you know where to do it. 1 p.m. tomorrow, live on YouTube, Winnipeg Sports Talk. Tell a friend about WST and hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.